Welcome back to another episode of Driven by Cause. This episode is brought to you by Ariba, the thought leaders behind the industry's only completely integrated and fully automated all-in-one digital fundraising, donor relationship management database, healthcare hospitality, and auction software with a unique differentiator as one single database. It is it is really awesome to be joined by my co-host Jay Fisks. As always, Jay, thank you. How are you doing today, Jay?
I'm doing I'm doing great, David, and looking forward to another great episode of Driven by Cause.
Today is going to be a great episode because we have a very special guest today, and today's guest is someone who truly has reshaped the global landscape of generosity. I'm thrilled to welcome Asha Curran. Asha is the CEO and co-founder of GivingTuesday, the worldwide generosity movement that inspires hundreds of millions of people across more than 100 countries to give collaborative and build a more connected world. Under Asha's leadership, Giving Tuesday has evolved far beyond a single day of giving. It has become a year-round global ecosystem of community-led movements, data-driven insights, and radical generosity. Asha is widely recognized as one of the most influential voices in modern philanthropy, championing the idea that generosity is not just an action, it's a value, a practice, a powerful force for social change. She is a celebrated speaker, a thought leader whose work explores the intersection of generosity, community, and movement. Asha has been featured on stages around the world from TED to global summits, and her writing appears in publications across the nonprofit and social impact sectors. Before co-founding Giving Tuesday, Asha held key leadership roles at 72nd Street Y, where the movement was born, and she continues to guide research and innovation that helps generosity understand and strengthens the behaviors that drive generosity. We're thrilled to have her with us today to talk about evolution of Giving Tuesday, the power of collective action, and how nonprofits can activate generosity in ways that create lasting impact. And that's what it's all about. Thank you for being here today, Asha.
Such a pleasure. Thank you for having me.
Well, we're really happy that you are here. So thank you for that again. But let's get started. It's really amazing that you started Giving Tuesday back in 2012 as a simple idea. One day dedicated to generosity to create a counterbalance to consumerism of the shopping season by dedicating a day to charitable acts, donations, community, and support. But looking back, did you ever imagine it would grow into a global movement involving 100 countries? And can you share with us how you came up with this idea in the first place?
The answer is no. I definitely could not have foreseen that it would become what it is today. Although when I look back at it, I could certainly pinpoint a few moments in those first couple of years where I realized that it was certainly going to be something much, much broader and deeper than I had thought. In terms of the idea, at that point, I was running the Belfer Center for Innovation at the 92nd Street Y, where I was Chief Innovation Officer as well. And our job as a team was really to play with notions of community and what that means in the 21st century. And to play with new digital technologies. So remember, this is sort of the really still the advent of social media. So honestly, what we were really doing at the time was just playing with a bunch of different hashtags and seeing where they landed. And that turned into sort of a body of work really that was around civic engagement broadly. And it was a bunch of different projects and a women's leadership fellowship. So there were a lot of different things happening at that period of time. And Giving Tuesday was just a fun experiment. What would happen if you added a day of giving following on Black Friday and Cyber Monday? Would anybody even care? Would anybody want to use social media to talk about such a thing? And happily, the answer to that was yes.
Wow.
Yeah.
Well, what you created is certainly an amazing story. And I'm sure you've seen some generosity expressed in some very unexpected places, from grassroots movements to global platforms. So would you share a story with us, something you might have encountered that changed how you define what generosity and impact look like?
Yeah, sure. And first, let me just say, and I do not say this out of false modesty at all, but I did not create this movement. A world full of leaders created this movement, and without them, I'd just be sitting here and not accomplishing much. It really, it's nothing without this massive distributed community, and especially the people who are leading in those 100+ countries. But yeah, there were so many stories that stand out to me. I think I would mention a couple of different things. One would be when I heard about an elderly woman in Baltimore who was, see, this was only the second Giving Tuesday, and she was watching the news and seeing Giving Tuesday play out in Baltimore, and the mayor was involved, and the Main Street shops were involved, and she really wanted to give something, but just didn't have any money to donate. And the one thing that she had that she felt was really valuable was an old piano that she was not able to play anymore. And so she found an after school program that offered free music lessons to underprivileged kids. And she called them up, and she had that piano rolled down her driveway and she gave it away. And I love that story because it shows that giving as a celebration is really infectious, and that when people are part of that, they really want to get involved, and they're going to look for ways to get involved. You don't have to convince them. They will actually proactively look for ways to be involved. And then I think a lot of what I would mention is that a lot of what I've seen that has blown my mind in terms of understanding how generosity looks, how it plays out, how it manifests, is what I've learned in different countries. I'll never forget during COVID, I was talking to our leader from Senegal, and I was saying, it's a big problem in the States right now is loneliness. People are isolated, they're locked down. Not everybody is locked down with people. And this is really a huge problem. And I just wonder how it is where you are. And she said, it's not a problem in Senegal. That in Senegal, nobody even eats alone, and that's just not like one of the problems that plagues that particular society. And I was like, wow, like a culture where loneliness isn't a problem is an amazing thing to even contemplate. And surely there is no value at the bottom of that culture other than generosity that is strong. I mean, of course, there's a million values, but there's no value that is stronger in creating a culture without loneliness, without people being alone. I just thought that was a really beautiful and very mind-blowing
Mm.
concept.
Oh, thank you for sharing that.
Yeah.
It's really nice to hear that though, if you really think about it, because if it's already being done, maybe we could adapt. But saying that, you've learned a lot. Could you share with us what you learned about how generosity spreads? I know you said it very humbly, it wasn't just you, but you were the leader in this. But how does it spread? And are there particular conditions like community structures, like sort of what you said, or community families, right? But leadership styles or storytelling approaches that really seem to make generosity contagious?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one of the key differentiators is are you transmitting a message of giving that is hopeful and optimistic and forward looking, or is it really like dwelling on all the bad things that we are all wrestling with? I think there's a way to balance those two things, but I think some fundraising tends to be driven by guilt. Or by shame, look how awful this one particular thing is, and then oh, you might feel guilted into donating to it, but you might not want to go back to that well again, right? It might not be associated in your mind with an adrenaline burst, a dopamine burst, like that good payoff we get from giving, when the giving is about fixing things, about being together, about creating connection. So I think that is a really important lesson. When I first became involved in Giving Tuesday, I definitely soon became aware that where we were looking at, I started to look into generosity, its effect on everything about a society, and was kind of surprised to see that what we know about giving is almost exclusively relegated to monetary giving. And that a lot of generosity manifests outside the monetary space, and that we can learn from that. So it's not that kind of giving that is not a monetary gift to a nonprofit organization is drawing away from that organization. It's not. If somebody is willing to give a donation to one organization, they're almost certainly likely to give a donation to a different organization as well. If somebody is likely to donate to crowdfunding or mutual aid or to bake a lasagna for a neighbor, they're probably more likely to donate to a nonprofit as well. So I think looking at generosity with an abundance mindset is really, really key, because if you start looking and appreciating where generosity shows up, you'll realize it's in your everyday life. It happens all the time. And then you sort of realize, I could probably do things a little bit more often, right? I could probably like leave my house with a little bit more of a smile on my face for strangers that I pass, right? Or find a way to improve my community, one small step at a time. So generosity, in some sense, I have the greatest job in the world, because everybody's always searching for scale, right? Scale is like the holy grail for almost everyone, and nothing scales like generosity. Like if we wanted to pick something and try to scale it, generosity was the right thing, because it is like the most contagious virus that there is. It has effects on people who even just witness a generous act are more likely to be generous themselves. Not even to be the recipient of generosity, just if they're a witness. And more recent data that we've unearthed through our data commons shows something really hopeful, I think, which is that the supermajority of Americans will want to help people even across political differences.
Yeah.
That one thing I think is really hopeful, because you wouldn't get that impression if you're reading, if you're reading the papers, if you're reading social media, you would think we're hopelessly divided. But then we were also able to see that even people who say they're not interested in helping people across political differences, they're affected by people they see doing that. So if they witness somebody being generous across political differences, they themselves will be changed just by seeing that.
Well, that's a lot to digest right there. And this next question may relate a little bit to that. And that's that many organizations approach Giving Tuesday sort of from a tactical perspective. They plan posts, they set targets, we need X dollars, on December 2nd, they send emails and so forth. What would happen if they treated that day as an experiment to see how generosity would work as a moment to enlist supporters for something even bigger? Maybe not monetarily, but in some other fashion, or maybe even a bigger monetary. How would, what would that look like?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked that question. We got one of my staff members posted in our group Slack some text from a email that she had received saying, from a nonprofit saying it's 2 weeks from Giving Tuesday, and the message was something like, we have a fundraising goal, and if you're inspired to give to us to help us meet our fundraising goal, that's wonderful, and if not, we welcome you into our mission in all these other ways. Use your voice, right? Become a volunteer, become involved in these other ways. And that I thought was a really beautiful message that nonprofits could really take an example from. Give people lots of ways to engage and make that engagement seem transformational, not transactional.
Yeah.
Givers these days, and I don't only mean young givers either, really want to be involved in the impact of an organization. And there's so many ways for a nonprofit to take advantage of that desire. But if somebody feels like they have nothing to offer, if they don't have money, then they're just going to sit it out. And there's no reason for anybody to sit out a day of generosity, whether they have money to give or whether they don't have money to give. Some of the best things happen on Giving Tuesday that do not involve money. And it's wonderful to see organizations blow through their fundraising goals. Like both of those things are really to be celebrated. In the beginning, our early surveys showed that about 80% of organizations used Giving Tuesday to try something new. So exactly what you're saying, experimentation.
Yeah.
And we loved to see that. I'm not sure if that's as true as it was in the beginning, because it has become so much more established. It's become an established day on the calendar and on the fundraising calendar, like December 31st. But I hope that organizations do retain that spirit of experimentation, and even if they fall down, right? Even if they fail at that,
Right.
that's the point of experimenting, is because you find out something that doesn't work. You learn a lesson from that. You pivot and you try something new the next time. Some organizations in the beginning, Donors Choose was one, did some really interesting A/B testing. So they'd send out, one email to some people, a different email to other people, and see which worked better. So I think it's a great day to do that. And it's also a great day to create. So a question that I get sometimes is, does Giving Tuesday cannibalize from December 31st? And the answer is, if it's approached the right way, absolutely not. In fact, what it does is draw back the giving season, right, from being that end of day, and literally the last day of the year that we're encouraging people to think about giving
Yeah,
to, a month earlier or almost a month earlier, sort of giving the opportunity to launch a campaign on Giving Tuesday, complete it on end of year as one example.
right.
And then some organizations use the day just to say thank you. An early participant was an association of Jewish organizations in Maryland in the very beginning who only used the day to say thank you, and they raised $1 million. Turned out
Wow,
that people were so, they felt so good about being thanked and not solicited, but just thanked for being part of their world that they offered. They
nice.
offered funds. Yeah.
Yeah,
Asha, I just want to throw something out. It's really interesting that you said it because I couldn't agree with you more. Especially even on Giving Tuesday, where you said, not everybody can give necessarily money, right? But
yeah,
if they have technology, and I really do believe in technology of helping organizations even do a better job, if they even had the ability to, what I call it peer-to-peer, where they would allow their volunteers, their board members, even their donors, right? Send out the message in a way about resonating the story and sharing with them, this is the story that you should send out on our behalf through you as individuals, right? And this is another way that they can actually build. So, and to go back about what you said, writing emails to different people, if they can really segment their database and understand the generational, um, Gen Zs and all of that, it could be different messages and approaching that and then giving other people that said, to your point, if you don't have the ability to give for whatever reason, maybe you could send this out to your friends and help us raise more money with you having certain goals, right? I think doing this on Giving Tuesday is so important. And I love the fact that you identify that. But tying that over is there's a lot of language around giving, often centers around the words like gifts, donations, support. If you could rename what we ask for on a Giving Tuesday to better reflect generosity, you know, I'll say it, generosity's multiple forms, right? What word or words would you choose and why that you could share with the audience here?
I think I would change the first word I would change is actually that we refer to people as donors. That's the word I would change. And I think it's as simple as calling people givers or champions or ambassadors, right? Those kind of words imply we're giving you a job to do with this mission. The job is not necessarily handing us some money, right? But we're giving you a job to do, go out into the world and spread the word and be our champion. And that to me is so much more powerful than donor, which just implies like giving something up and a completely transactional relationship. So that's probably the word I would change. And then that kind of defaults to changing the word donation. I don't mind the word gift because I think time is a gift. I think voice is a gift. I think advocacy is a gift, right? All of those things are acts of generosity, and a gift is an act of generosity. But I would change the way that we change givers into nameless, faceless, right, representation on a spreadsheet. That they're not. And their relationship to causes is fundamentally different than it was a generation ago. You mentioned Gen Z and Gen Alpha. Whether we as a sector want to change or not is out of our hands. We will have to change. We will have to adapt because the younger two generations simply don't give in the same way. And a nonprofit being a nonprofit, like having that tax status, being an incorporated organization, it is not going to mean anything to these future givers, right? They are going to give where the best engagement possibility is. They're going to give where they feel like they can see and feel the impact, and they have more things to do than just click a button.
yeah. Obviously we know there's a wide spectrum of nonprofits, from local nonprofits, very localized, to worldwide nonprofits. They cover the gamut in terms of size, number of people, impact, that sort of thing. So as a global day of giving some of the smaller nonprofits may be a little hesitant to participate in Giving Tuesday because they feel like they're not going to stand out amongst the Giving Tuesday noise, if you will. So do you have any advice for some of these smaller nonprofits on how they can get started to make the most of that day?
Yeah, I'm so glad you asked this question because I think there's a couple real misconceptions out there about it. And the first one is about size, and the second one is about noise. Actually, small and medium-sized nonprofits have always done exceptionally well on Giving Tuesday. I think the reason for that is while a big multinational nonprofit might have lots and lots and lots of marketing dollars to throw at a campaign,
Yeah,
a smaller organization has something that bigger organizations almost always lack, and that's agility. I'm not saying they lack it 100% of the time, but really the ability of smaller organizations to create an idea. Let's go back to experimentation, right? To create an idea might work, might not work, might draw in some new people. That it's much easier in a small and mid-sized organizations. And we've consistently seen organizations that size do really, really well. Now, that's not because it happens automatically. Giving Tuesday is not a faucet and you turn it on and money pours in. You have to put the energy and the resource toward a good and thoughtful campaign. But if that energy is put toward a good and thoughtful campaign, just as likely to make a proportional amount of money
yeah,
to raise an amount of funds or to do whatever the goal is. So that's really important for people to know because I don't want to see people sit Giving Tuesday out. If they want to, that's fine, but at least it should be based on a reason that's not a myth. So the small and medium organizations is one thing. And then the noise is even harder. To me, the noise issue is like saying, I'm going to sit out Christmas this year because like there's so much peace and love and like what am I going to get out of it by participating? Like the noise is the point, right? Like the point is that on Giving Tuesday, there's this huge spike of awareness about giving. And
yeah,
often Giving Tuesday is the only day of the year where people, absent natural or unnatural disasters, which I would say is an exception, where people are actively looking for somewhere to donate.
yeah,
And if you think about as a sector, we are constantly trying to talk people into giving us money, right? We're trying to distract them from their busy, normal lives to think, focus on this
right,
cause. It's really important to have your help. Well, on Giving Tuesday, they're looking for you, right? So if you're
right,
not out there telling your story, then it's a big loss,
yeah,
right? And so take advantage of the noise. That's the
right,
point of a collective day. It's the point of any holiday or any global ritual or anything like the Olympics or right, like things that people pay a
yeah,
lot of attention to all at the same time generate a tremendous amount of goodwill, a tremendous amount of excitement because everybody, regardless of who they are, where they come from, I really believe this. Everybody wants to feel part of something bigger than themselves. Right? It's like a key leadership lesson, even within an organization, right? Everybody wants to feel like they're part of a bigger mission. And it's certainly true from a more meta population perspective. So that this is the day that we all get to feel part of something bigger than ourselves when it comes to giving.
yeah. So what you're saying really is that the smaller organizations get a chance to leverage off of the marketing and the funding and the energy created by the larger organizations. They can sort of ride on the coattails
Yes.
and ride the wave, so to speak.
Exactly, exactly.
Yeah,
And we've seen that since the very beginning. And if anything, the noise was noisier in the very beginning because social media was so much more concentrated, right? Everyone was either on Facebook or Twitter.
yeah,
And then there was like sort of Instagram and like in its ascendancy. But you really had like a critical mass of people on a couple of platforms. I don't think
yeah,
that's true anymore. And even where you do, people tend to participate less, or they tend to participate in very, very specific prescribed groups. So it's a very different situation now. But in the beginning, when social media, it was like Super Bowl level numbers of impressions, discussion on social media, et cetera. And then we really did see these small organizations like breaking through that noise and then like saying to us, we doubled or tripled our goal. It was
yeah.
really
Great,
lovely and rewarding.
fabulous.
Moving forward on that, Giving Tuesday brings people together around shared values. I think that's really amazing. And it really is creating a moment of collective action. But the real power lies in what happens after December 2nd, right?
Yeah.
When that energy can be channeled into a sustained community engagement. Asha, if you can imagine the ideal post-Giving Tuesday ecosystem, what does 12 months of grassroots mobilization look like to you? And how can organizations nurture the relationships sparked on Giving Tuesday to build year-round communities of advocacy, volunteers, change makers who are truly or are invested not just in giving, but in co-creating impact. And I
Happily,
know that was a lot to grab. So
no, no, not at all. Happily, I don't have to imagine it because it's already happening. And certainly we have a long way to go in terms of growth. But the vast majority, so let me step back for just a minute and talk about a little bit about how our model works. In the very beginning, we were directly in touch with participating nonprofits, but that ended years and years ago because, first of all, there's too many nonprofits for a little organization like ours to be in touch with. Also, because we work with lots of platforms, right, who have then a critical mass of nonprofits on their own as their own client base. So that's a really good sort of distribution system. So as Giving Tuesday grew, what happened was that people from different countries, or sometimes people from small towns in the United States or big cities, started calling us up and saying, we'd really like to bring this idea, this movement to our country or our small town or our big city or whatever it might be. So at this point, that's 110 countries and it's about 400 local communities here in the US. And every single one of them looks at Giving Tuesday as a year-round movement, 100%. So it's not whether is it a day or is it a year-round thing? It's both, right? It's both, just like you are married 365 days a year, but you have an anniversary once a year, and that's a big day of celebration, right? So our leaders look at it in various ways. Some of them do a giving every Tuesday, okay, right? So they have content, tools, resources, storytelling that go out under that banner consistently throughout the year. And then the countries, with the people who are operating at the country and community level, are really bringing people together as a sort of act of civic engagement or a banner of community-led change year round. And that the people who are doing that don't only include nonprofits, right? That's really bringing together all the corners of a community, right? The schools and the families, the houses of worship. And I love those campaigns because I think generosity should be that way. We should all feel responsible for taking care of each other in a community, not just thinking, oh, the nonprofits will take care of people, right?
Yeah.
It should be all of our jobs and with a high level of awareness of what those local nonprofits are really doing and how they are helping and I say local, even though obviously national nonprofits do a lot of helping in local communities. But local organizations have a special place in my heart because they know what's happening in a community. They are the ones who know. They know what the problems are. They know where the solutions are likely to lie, right? And it's those organizations who really need the support of everyone in their community, not just their so-called, don't like this word either, but their beneficiaries, right? So in my neighborhood, for example, there is a food pantry. I live in a very small neighborhood. I live in New York City, but I live in a very small neighborhood in it. And there's a WhatsApp group, and somebody said, the food pantry is having like double the normal number of people come in, and it's only open on Fridays. And so they said we really need more donations. And so I, next day sort of packed up a bag and, was walking to the subway anyway. So I had my bag of food, and that line was around the block. And I don't mean the line of people getting the food. I mean the line of people donating the food.
Wow.
So
oh my God.
right. So as soon as that one message went out, all my neighbors packed up their bags and went to bring food to the food pantry because people needed it. So that kind of community caring, I think, is at the heart of any healthy and thriving community or culture or society. So it's about the nonprofits, but it's about the nonprofits as part of that bigger ecosystem. And so that's what I imagine when I imagine a successful year-round giving movement.
Wow.
Hey Jay, before you go, I want to. I know you have a question that you would love to ask. I just want to share something with Asha. First of all, there's so much goodness in the world, as much as we hear so many bad things. And I hope people promote the goodness and take a picture of that, of this is a line of people giving. These
Yeah.
are givers. I think we forget sometimes to do that, even though we always talk about acknowledgement and recognition and or however you do that. But community awareness and what people are doing when they hear something like this and the outreach, they just need to know what's going on. I mean, that's all it comes down to.
Yeah.
But my point is, there's a lot of great, super kindful people that just will help you. Just got to give them some guidance. So
Yeah.
I love that stuff. But anyway, sorry, Jay. I just wanted to share the
No,
goodness of
totally.
people.
Love
Well,
that.
very, very appropriate comment. Appreciate that. So little tactical stuff here, though. With digital fundraising, social media, peer-to-peer campaigns, all evolving very rapidly. So where do you see the biggest opportunities for innovation this Giving Tuesday? Perhaps
Wow,
outside,
yeah,
perhaps
it's
within
such
those.
a great question. I mean, the innovation on Giving Tuesday that's so organic and that arises from nonprofit organizations, from communities and countries all over the world is like the best thing about it, right? It's never there's never the same Giving Tuesday twice. It's always
Yeah.
there's always elements that are exactly the same and incredibly joyful and heartwarming, and then there's always something new, right? At one point, a couple of years ago, some of our country leaders started lighting up their national monuments for Giving Tuesday in their either in the Giving Tuesday logo colors or their national colors. And now there's dozens of countries around the world that are doing that. So all these buildings get lit up. That right there is not a specific act of giving, but it is an act of unity, right? In Rio, Christ the Redeemer statue was lit up for Giving Tuesday last year. And then we look at buildings in Italy and in Colombia and just everywhere. So there's really fun things that happen like that. And I think, since you mentioned those different mechanisms, the crowdfunding, the peer-to-peer, I think what from an organizational perspective, just the adaption of an abundance mindset when it comes to thinking about that spectrum of giving opportunities. What I see too much now is nonprofits, again, being scared that those are replacement behaviors, instead of seeing them as outlets for generosity that we didn't have a generation ago, and that now there are so many ways to express that particular value. I heard a really interesting talk at one point about how somebody who gives to a GoFundMe, let's say, the worry is, okay, somebody's giving to a GoFundMe, so they're not going to give to a nonprofit. But in fact, the way the psychology works is more like, I'm going to give to a GoFundMe. Let's say that there's some kind of tragedy, right? Where there's a loss of life. And I want to give money so that a family can bury the father, right, who died in this tragedy. Then I'm also going to be likely to give to a nonprofit that might be addressing the root cause of why that tragedy happened. So there's just fundamental differences in the sort of payoff that I'm going to get, right? The reward that I'm going to feel for giving in different ways. And I would love to see nonprofits really look at that and adapt some of those best practices, right? What mindset am I in? What opportunities am I going to give to people to show that they believe in my mission, even if that means, right, that somebody else might also raise money.
Yeah.
Love it. You know, Asha, if you could wave a wand, and I think you do once in a while, but remove one outdated fundraising habit that holds organizations back from truly embracing generosity, what would it be?
Oh, I can't mention five. No. Yes, let's see. I think
Feel free to if you want to, but I know we're always limited with time, but do it. Go
I
ahead.
think the main one is that I wish that nonprofits and everyone would erase the phrase donor fatigue from their mental lexicon, because it's a very misunderstood phrase. And if it does exist, it means that that donor is tired of giving to your organization, but it doesn't mean they're tired of giving. We don't get tired of giving. We don't get tired of giving any more than we get tired of loving. They are just the flip sides of the same exact value. And assuming that people have this sort of finite little part of their brain or their heart that is devoted to generosity, you better tap that tiny part because it's going to run out, right? And then they're going to get sick of hearing from you, is just an absolute misunderstanding of the human condition. We have, and half of our work is data. It's not like we're just guessing at this stuff, although I would have said this in the very beginning too. Generosity is innate. It is innate to human beings. And sure, there's a lot of ways that a person can have so much cynicism, right, or rage that it crowds out that generosity, but doesn't mean that it wasn't there to begin with. So I think assuming that people are generous and not blaming it on income inequality or the economy either, because it's always people with less money who proportionally give more. And people who, during COVID, we saw people who were very worried about their own economic security, making sure that their neighbors were okay, right? Putting on their own oxygen mask, but then absolutely making sure that others were safe, fed, right? That they had companionship. We saw that throughout the entire pandemic, and that was obviously a very concentrated and specific situation, but we see it all the time anyway. So I guess that's the one that floats to the top for me that I would.
So we've waved the magic wand.
If
We've
I had
got
my magic wand, yes.
we got rid of the donor fatigue. So now let's wave it again. And what's one good radical piece of advice to every nonprofit listening that's something they're not doing yet, but they should be? What advice would that be?
That's a really tough one because nonprofits are doing lots of different things. So some are doing things that I would say everybody should take that up. And I think it's really encapsulated in that message that my coworker got from this nonprofit, which she didn't even name what nonprofit it was, but she just posted it because she was like, "This is such a great message. I wish they all said this." So I think just embracing that mindset, getting out of the scarcity mindset, really, really just getting rid of it, and the competitive mindset. I would love to see more coalition campaigns. So the Giving Tuesday has dozens of coalition campaigns, and so what those are is organizations of a common mission banding together to run a campaign that is about the mission. So we call this mission over brand. So it's not about promoting their own logo. It's not about making enough money that they're eclipsing the other organizations who share their mission. It's about lifting all the boats, and it's about telling a much broader story about whatever that mission is. The very first coalition campaign that we had was called Giving Zoo Day. And it was a little zoo who had run a fundraising campaign for years, but then just decided to create this overarching campaign and invite any and all zoos that wanted to join this campaign to do so. And it's still running. And that was like 10 years ago. Then we have coalition campaigns for, Give for Domestic Violence, Native Gives. The list goes on and on and on. It might be around cause. It might be around identity. It might be around region. I would love to see more of those. Let's put our logos and egos to the back burner and really focus the campaigns on the things that unite us and the missions that we share.
Yeah, great.
But it happens more often that if there are, 6 arts organizations in a metropolitan downtown, they probably never speak to each other.
Yeah, and I think, as an auctioneer, I see this a lot. A lot of nonprofits see other nonprofits as a competitor.
Exactly.
And they really should be seeing other nonprofits as a partner. And they just somehow they think it's a zero-sum game, that if someone donates to another nonprofit, that's money they're not going to get. You've addressed this many times during our discussion today. There is not a finite amount of money. It's a question of who is asking it the right way, who's presenting the right message. And so, as you just said, if you can do a coalition where you've got a number of different nonprofits that share a common goal, they're not competitive with each other. They're actually partners, whether they like it or not. They're partners because their missions
What
are similar.
happens is people respond better to it.
Yeah.
Right? People, and if we're going to go back to talking about the younger generations, people, though, they will respond better to a really moving story that is about a cause rather than a logo, give money only to me. So I think, Jay, I really think that's at the heart of all of it. It's like that assumption that generosity is zero sum. All bad decisions flow from that assumption. It's the classical, if you ask the wrong question, you're never going to get the right answer.
Right. Yeah. Excellent.
Asha, I'm going to shift gears a little bit. We've talked a lot about your work. You've given us a lot of amazing insights. I'm curious to know, what is something about you that might surprise our audience to find out?
Oh, well, I'm pretty boring, but I guess from a Giving Tuesday perspective, I think something that still surprises me sometimes is that the day that I started working on Giving Tuesday, the hashtag then, I didn't have any experience in philanthropy at all. I don't have a philanthropic background. I've never had another job in philanthropy other than this one. I had a very, very weird and non-linear career. I was a childbirth educator and a doula at one point. I worked in book publishing. And then I worked at the 92nd Street Y for years, and that was a nonprofit environment, but it was a community and cultural center. So music classes and symphonies and lectures, all kinds of wonderful things, but not the sector as the three of us know it to be. No experience in that at all. And that still honestly does sometimes leave me feeling like still the new girl in the room, because there's, people in our sector who have decades more experience. But I also think that it means that I came into the work almost like zero budgeting, like zero-based budgeting, right? I didn't have any preconceived notions. I was not warped in any way by the sort of received wisdom that I might have if I'd been a lifer in the sector. So I think that's, that is something that I think is surprising sometimes to people.
Well, we like to finish our show with the final question here. And it's we ask every guest this question, and that is, what's something that we didn't ask you that you wish we had asked you?
Well, you asked great questions, first of all. So you basically covered all the bases. But I think a really basic question that sometimes I forget even to lay down the case for, because I feel so convinced of it that it just seems obvious to me, is why does generosity matter at all? Right? Well, isn't it
Wow.
just I think that some people feel like generosity is a nice to have, right? Like we need to make sure that, meet all our basic needs and everything. And then if I feel like being kind to somebody, if I feel like giving a donation, if I feel like, chipping into my neighborhood volunteer activity, maybe I'll do that. If life isn't too busy, if life isn't too hard. And I think that's a huge misconception, because I think there's nothing more fundamental to how we live our lives and whether they're good lives than generosity. If I asked you, do you want to live in a community where people give to each other, where neighbors take care of each other, where, we had at one point a band of teenagers who were like roaming around their neighborhood on Giving Tuesday, just raking the yards of their neighbors because they wanted to get in on the action. That's the kind of community I want to live in, where people do that for each other. So I think why does generosity matter? It matters because it is fundamental to our happiness and to our thriving and to our connection to each other.
Wow.
Asha,
Whew.
that was great. But I'm going to take a pause and we'll be right back after this message.
We are a team that has had an enduring influence on the nonprofit industry for more than 3 decades. We pride ourselves on developing and delivering technology with a purpose, software born of a genuine understanding and passion for cause. We are relentlessly dedicated to our client success. We are with our clients for good. We are Ariva, tech with purpose, driven by cause. Ariva is the trusted advisor and market leader of fundraising, donor relationship management, and auction software and services. Exceed further, our evolutionary all-in-one digital fundraising and donor relationship management software is helping nonprofits worldwide further their mission, transform fundraising, and cultivate relationships with donors and constituents. Our Maestro Auction virtual, live, and silent auction software, text-to-bid, virtual and mobile bidding software, and text-to-fund, text-based donation software are helping nonprofits raise billions of dollars through thousands of virtual fundraising events, charity auctions, and galas. Visit Ariva.com and reach out today and see how Ariva can help your nonprofit organization go further.
Welcome back, everyone. All right, we're going to go into our next segment and ask what we call the maestro. Jay, what question do you have from our audience today?
Yeah, David, we have an interesting question today. The first one comes from Dolores, and I'd be interested in hearing what Asha would say about this particular question. So here's Dolores's question. At my nonprofit, we've noticed rising engagement on social media, but declining repeat giving. How can we better understand what motivates our supporters so that we can turn that interest into deeper and more lasting relationships? And that's right up your alley, Asha.
Yeah, it's interesting. I'm not sure if by repeat giving she means repeat monthly giving or simply retention, like somebody gives once and then they give again sometime in the next year. But whether it is either one of those questions, I think it is the most important question there is. So, uh, Giving Tuesday donors, we say givers, follow my own rule, are extremely likely to give again just during the month of December. I think the lesson that that offers us is that Giving Tuesday is unique among days of the year that see high giving engagement in the sense that it is, and I mentioned this before, a very celebratory day. People have fun. They go on runs, right? They do like 5Ks for charity. They start giving circles, right? They have neighborhood block parties. This is a really celebratory energy. And yes, we're all aware of the problems that we're trying to solve, but we're also aware of our own power in solving them. So that when we feel good about something, we're likely to want to do it again. Right? That's a pretty basic mechanism of human behavior. So make Giving Tuesday something that they'll want to do again. And recurring monthly giving is something that we are trying really, really hard to see how we can encourage, how we can support tools and resources that increase that, because we see a $50 billion opportunity here, an additional $50 billion in giving basically being left on the table for a bunch of different reasons. One of them is that we cram all giving into December, right? One is that the other opportunities for giving during the year often, revolve around terrible things having happened. Somebody once said to me, all of this is great, but I can't, if I tell my boss this, he'll say, you can't spend participation. And I would just push back against that in the strongest possible terms and say, if we look at this from a future perspective and what matters, all that will matter is participation.
Yeah.
So how are we getting our people to participate and to participate in a way that creates such a joyful experience for them that they will want to do it again. And to just really sympathize with Dolores in the sense that giving is so volatile in these recent years. Just the volatility is so much more than we've seen in past decades. Although we do see declining donor participation, we do see those numbers declining year over year, and we find that very, very, very concerning. So I'm with Dolores that it can be really hard to know which end is up in these particular times.
I'd like to add to that too, and I'd
Please.
love your feedback on it, Asha, because we see the same thing. We talk a lot about the decline in donor acquisition. We talk a lot about the decline in retention. And you're right, retention doesn't mean they lost a donor. Retention could literally mean that a donor has been giving for 10 years or 5 years or whatever that period of time is. And this year they only gave 50%. And that could be a decline in retention. One of the things that
Mhm.
we have seen, and I know we could probably talk about the subject for a very, very long time, but it's also about acknowledgement. And acknowledgement isn't necessarily just sending that thank you, that's an automatic thank you. But if they make the time, and I think again, this is where technology plays a role sometimes, right? Because if they're using a GoFundMe like, they're only getting that donation that somebody sent that out. And where there could have been 100 people that participate in that donation. They really do want to have it where it's integrated into their solution. So they're capturing, first of all, every donor and then putting together a best practice, I'll say it, of reaching out literally with a phone call. It's not just about that, and sharing about what their donation gave an impact, asking them if they'd like to learn more about their organization and if they would be interested to get their newsletter, to be invited to an event. I've seen this so often that more people aren't doing this than are doing it. And the ones that I've talked to, because we talk to them every single day, that are actually doing it, we're seeing their retentions rate go up and also seeing their donor acquisition rates increase as well. So I've seen it on both sides, and I live on both sides. I will tell you, I'm a donor, I'm a volunteer, I love doing
Mhm.
this stuff. And the ones that it truly engage me, and not just with an automatic thank you acknowledgement receipt, I tend to give more. The
Right.
ones that don't, I probably forget about them just because we're so inundated with stuff. So I just wanted to add that. I think those are important things. And you said certain words like the ambassadors and what they do and acknowledging that. But anyways, back to you, Jay. Thank you.
No, that's right. No, thank you, Asha, for that great answer. And Dolores, thanks for submitting it. And if any of you listening would like to submit your questions for our next segment of Ask the Maestro, send them to us, and we might just be answering it in our next Driven by Cause.
Jay, thanks. And Asha, it was a real pleasure having you with us today. It was such a
You.
treat. It really
So
was a
much
great treat.
fun.
Oh my God, it was. I love the engagement and going back and forth. But thank you so much for all of your insight and your advice to the listeners. I mean, it really is truly impactful.
Thank you so much. It was really, really a pleasure. Went by in a flash. And I wish you both a happy Giving Tuesday in less than 2 weeks.
Right on.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And I want to thank all of our listeners for for joining us today. Make sure you subscribe to Driven by Cause. And while you're at it, I say it this way, leave us a 5-star rating, not a 4-star rating, but a 5-star rating. I also want to give a special thank you to our amazing sponsor, Ariva. And thank you to all of our fantastic listeners. We hope you'll enjoy us next time on Driven by Cause and make it a great day.